I think we've talked when we first spoke, obviously not on the show, some time ago. The way you laid it out for me in terms of major incident, this audience, I think was really quite spectacular. What we're working towards and the vision we have, and it was really interesting because you talked about obviously with PagerDuty a certain amount of automation in terms of engaging and mobilizing your engineers as well, but having this, using Rundeck and having Runbooks set up for diagnostics and health checks, essentially at the push of a button, without the need for some of your more senior engineers necessarily being involved immediately, or even whilst they are in the process, let's say, of being woken up and engaging, they can potentially land on a war room, on a bridge call, and you've got a lot more information and areas for them to start looking at. And I just think that's a really incredible thing and very powerful thing you're talking about when we're talking about major incidents, because we're talking about things that cost thousands, if not millions of pounds, depending on the scenario, of downtime to people, whether it's direct costs, whether it's reputational damage, whether it's breaching legalities that they're obligated to, whatever it may be. I think the use case for that just becomes absolutely incredible. And I know, obviously, we're very privileged. We work with many organisations all over the world. That's just not something that exists at the moment in any way, shape or form, or not that is being used at the level it should be anyway. And I think it's really quite special, what you've been talking about.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's interesting because this is one of these sort of funny things that we just sort of stumbled on along the way, right? And a lot of our prospects or people that are coming to us for the first time, either the open source product or the commercial product, we go through this, automation, we're thinking about doing things, right? It's like, we're active people. Like, where's my screwdriver and my hammer? I'm going to go get this done, right? So automation is going to get things done. And then you kind of hit this realization that, wow, actually, one of the most powerful things here is not even doing anything, just being able to take all of that investigatory knowledge that we've learned over the years. Like, there's somebody in your organization right now from like the network team that just knows on the command line, can just rattle off like 20 different, system level diagnostics and tell you exactly what's going on the network that's hitting that device, right? But like, they'll try to tell it to you and you're just like, okay, I think I remember sort of some of this, right? Or they'll learn something new, their knowledge will be outdated, right? And so a lot of times it's disseminating that knowledge, it's disseminating that ability. It's the ability to say, hey, how am I going to diagnose this thing? Or how am I going to tell if this application is healthy? And when you talk about the high velocity of these organizations today, and how fast releases are coming, how fast things are changing, you can't keep up, right? So the people that are building those things are best to know if that thing is healthy. So have them give you, the first layer of, here's how you tell if this service is actually, look for this log, look for these entries, is answering on this port, and check all these system resource levels to see if something's wrong. And everybody knows stuff like that. So how do you put that together and then hand it off to somebody else? And that doesn't sit well in a monitoring tool. It's not really, you could use it is sort of a kind of monitoring, but it's not. It's more of a health check, status query type activity. And that doesn't live anywhere today. It lives in people's heads, and I got to go now page them or yell over the cue ball or, try to pass documents back and forth to tell you how to do that, versus saying, hey, let's just take that, whatever you're doing, whether it's scripts or system commands or API calls, whatever it is, and just let's drop this into these Rundeck jobs. And then I can now hand that off to you, right? And, I can spread that ability to tell whether or not things are healthy or not. And, you get these stories of like, it's the frustration of like, oh yeah, it happens all the time. I roll out of bed at 3 a.m, right? There's some problem on something. The first responder person, I get on the bridge call with them and I'm like, hey, what's going wrong? Oh, X is broken. Okay. Got the page. Yeah. Have you tried Y? I did. What happened? It didn't work. Okay. Why didn't work? I don't remember. Right? What did it say? I don't remember. Right? Okay. So now we go back. And so it's just, you're not accumulating knowledge during these incidents. But if you're able to capture that, that ability to take these expert diagnostic actions and have them tied to the incident record, you're now seeing the history of all that stuff. It's all in there. So new responders can figure out what's going on. But more importantly, my first responders can figure out, most of the time, can get a pretty good triangulation on where the problem lies by being able to execute all of those. So we're dramatically compressing the front half of the incident timeline by automating that and putting all those at people's fingertips, whether it's running automatically, right, based on what the monitoring saw, or it's people showing up and going into their diagnostic folder and trying these different things, talking about it, chatting about it in the incident timeline. It's just, there's so much that can be saved in the first part of that of the incident timeline before you even get to worrying about how do we automate the actual response, the actual go fix it part, because that part's the easy part.
It's interesting because you've got your expert who obviously might perform a certain task at a certain speed. Even if they do disseminate that knowledge effectively, there's no guarantee that the people or the peers who now have that knowledge perform the task as quickly as they do, particularly if they're not at the level that individual is. So what may take, I don't know, John 5 minutes, may take Sue 15, 20, because got to keep looking back at the material. So it's really interesting that you're enabling, particularly for initial diagnostics and checks, you're enabling that initial part to happen much quicker. So in the global best practice, one of the things we teach is with slick, robust organizations, everyone knows their role during a major incident, everything's in place. Initial comms should be issued within 15 minutes. That's more than achievable, and that's the benchmark, that's the standard. And the things that normally get in the way are lack of tooling. So not having something like PagerDuty to automate some of the engagement and trying to mobilize the operation, scrambling around for phone numbers or trying to escalate if people aren't responding. But there's a really important bit there as well that I think, by the nature of major incidents, they are more complex. It's very rare that you have all the information that you need to go on. And I think what you see a lot of major incident managers or whoever's performing that role find is they desperately want to give at least a reasonable amount of information for those initial comms. The problem is, if you don't get a great start, and the diagnostics are going to take longer to do, you almost have very little to go on. And it's a real frustration for stakeholders to receive that as well. So for me, this really fills that gap as well, and that need for, at least if you don't fully understand the complex issue, you do have baseline diagnostics that you can perform very, very quickly. So I think I can really see this becoming a substantial game changer for a lot of operations.